The last place I wanted to be was Frostnipistan.
This One's Wife. Archie and the Landmines. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Archie and the Landmines. Is this some new trendy band that you ought to have some regard to, that have come out with a spunky, spangly guitared hit single? No, it's not. Instead, let's find out what all of this is about. It involves a conversation between the Prince of Pink Pancakes and his often not seen son Archie, revolving around landmines. Yes, you heard that correctly. Landmines. Whilst most young children might be talking about the latest Marvel superhero or Peppa Pig or their favourite nursery rhyme or fairy tale story, in the Sussex household it's a much more serious matter because it's a discussion about landmines. Perhaps it arose something like this. It was dusk. The sun is going down in Monty Shit Show. The heat still lingers, and it's bedtime. Harry goes to Archie's bedroom to wish him good night when Archie asks, "Hey, Dad, what's a landmine?"
"Oh, a landmine, young fellow? Why are you asking about that?"
"Well, I heard you say to Mummy, living with you is like walking through a minefield." Quite possibly, that could have been the case after all. Many of you who've been ensnared with a narcissist know that it is the proverbial treading on eggshells or walking through a minefield. Or perhaps, similarly, at bedtime, Archie asked the following: "Papa, why is it that the gardener suddenly went bang in the garden, and then the pool boy did, and Omid Scobie was running around out there until suddenly I saw him flying through the air?"
Yeah, bit of a problem that. Pesky paparazzi keep turning up and those weirdo derangers who think you don't exist. Well, so, your mum put these things out called landmines. I was against it, you see, as a consequence of what your granny did in relation to them. Granny Diana, who isn't with us any longer. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. So, we seeded some mines out there, and unfortunately, the gardener couldn't read the sign, and he wandered over there and went kabang, and then the pool boy kicked a football there and went to retrieve it, and he went kabang, and unfortunately, the improbably named plastic-faced lieutenant that's called Omid Scobie, he was just snooping around in the bushes because he needed a wee, I think, and then boom. So, they trod on landmines. Maybe that's how it came about. Well, we probably will never know, but some lovely speculation is called for nevertheless. But what did Harry actually have to say about it all? Well, fortunately for us, there's a little piece of footage where he talks about this conversation and also, of course, manages to shoehorn his dead mother into the conversation once again. Let's take a watch of that.
As I said earlier, Archie was asking about landmines. I was talking about how some of these guys were blowing up. I think IEDs, improvised explosive devices, is probably a bit too much at this stage. But I found myself talking to him about mines at 5 years old. And interestingly, it gave me a chance to talk about my mum, his grandma, which I didn't even really consider. So that became the sort of the outcome of the story for him, which is he then saw videos, he wanted to see videos and photographs of his grandma Diana out doing her thing for landmines all those years ago. So it produced a very interesting conversation between me and him, different to what I thought it was going to be.
The plot thins. It would appear that the conversation turned to landmines because Harry, in his infinite wisdom, was telling Archie about what had happened to some of the competitors, namely that they'd had limbs blown off, presumably, and therefore Archie, like any inquiring child, would ask, why? And then Harry would explain, because of landmines. Clearly, talking about IEDs was a bridge too far for the young chap, so he stuck to landmines, and therefore Harry introduced that topic to a 5-year-old, who then went on to ask more about wanting to see the landmine action of Granny Diana, because, of course, Harry couldn't resist an opportunity to talk about his mother. Now, it's certainly the case that it would make sense that Harry would talk about his deceased mother, Archie's grandmother, to Archie. After all, they are family. But it is with the weary acknowledgement that once again in this conversation that took place at Invictus Games, not only does Harry have to tell us about a conversation that took place with a 5-year-old involving landmines, that he once again has to shoehorn the fact that there was a conversation about his mother. Yes, Harry continues to dine out on her. There are two things really which arise from this piece of footage. The first is that it could well be utter bullshit, that no such conversation actually took place. I mean, after all, who on earth sits around talking about landmines with 5-year-olds? Oh, Harry, yeah, Archie, guess what? Harry here, your dad. How about we watch a video about AK-47 maintenance? Really interesting. Gee, yeah, sure, Pops. That'll be exciting. Yeah, and then afterwards, to get you off to sleep, here's a film about thermonuclear war. It's called Threads. It's a riot. Quite possibly the dim-witted one would actually talk about landmines with his son. So there's a possibility that it didn't actually happen. But I think that it did. Here's why. Harry's such a dimwit that he would think that it would be appropriate to talk about this. And, of course, he's always itching to talk about his mother as well, and would do so to his son. Therefore, I think that he lacks the imagination to have made up such a story. I think also that he lacks the awareness to realise that it's not really appropriate to be talking to a 5-year-old about minefields. And then, of course, what does he do? In conversation with whoever it is that he's talking to, I don't know whether he was being interviewed or that they've just caught a piece of footage of him talking to a fellow a competitor or such like, that he decides, I know, it's appropriate for me to share this little anecdote about me talking to my son about landmines because I was talking about how the competitors ended up losing limbs, etc. And that led to him asking why did that happen. So I told him that they were likely to have trod on landmines, in other words, IEDs. And I then decided I would also talk about my mother because, hey, after all, I didn't expect the conversation would go in that direction. I think this conversation with Archie probably did take place, but it's demonstrative of Harry's inability, because he's not very bright, to realise this isn't a particularly clever thing to share, because most people are going to think, what the fuck were you doing talking about landmines with a 5-year-old? As I've just said, what are you going to do? Move on to gun maintenance and what's the best type of shotgun for holding up banks? And yeah, let's look at the effects of napalm on people in Southeast Asia. Seriously. Do you think that the conversation actually took place? Do you think that Harry did speak to Archie about landmines, or do you think it's made up? Or do you think, like I do, that the conversation did take place, but Harry demonstrates once again his stunning lack of awareness by chuntering on about it in order to then again ensure that he talks about his dead mother? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for watching.